Now, I've been playing video games since the original Nintendo Entertainment System, which I got for Christmas back when I was a kid. But I didn't actually start playing RPGs until the 16-bit days. And a big reason for that is 2 RPGs, both with the number 2 in the title. Now, the RPG to kick this off was Final Fantasy II for the Super Nintendo. Now, I didn't actually own a Super Nintendo growing up. We had a Genesis in the house. Well, more accurately, my little brother had a Genesis in the house, and I just played his. But pretty much everyone I knew and a lot of kids in the neighborhood had the Super Nintendo, and they had Final Fantasy II. So I got to watch a lot of different people play this game. I basically saw the entire game from start to finish, but in like a weird kind of segmented order. Kind of like how a lot of people would probably see It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas time, you know, in different chunks and always with a group of people. But the game fascinated me. I mean, back in the Nintendo days, I might have got my hands on Dragon Warrior like once or twice, and it just didn't click for me as a kid. And I never even played Legend of Zelda because none of the rental stores around my place had it. But when I watched people play Final Fantasy II, holy shit. It was like a completely different gaming experience like anything I've ever seen before. And I mean, as like, I was maybe 10 when this happened, I was fucking blown away by what I was seeing. There was an actual story. I mean, not just like a simple basic story or even a couple of cutscenes like you got in Ninja Gaiden. I mean, this was like a full epic story. And I had to eventually play the game. But since we didn't have a Super Nintendo, I had to go looking for an RPG in the Genesis, and that's when I came across Shining Force. Now, originally it was the first Shining Force I played. I played like a level or two just while I was renting it, and it was amazing. I really loved it. And probably appropriate too, because honestly, Shining Force for the Genesis was really one of those beginner RPGs. You only had like 4 slots for everything, actions, items, magic, everything. It was a simplified RPG in a lot of different ways, and it's a great entry RPG. So after renting it, yeah, I definitely wanted that game for Christmas, and it was right at the top of my wish list of Santa. So when Christmas morning came around, I got an even bigger surprise. Not Shining Force 1, but Shining Force 2. And I gotta tell ya, as much as I was kind of thrown by it initially, Shining Force 2 blew Shining Force 1 out of the water for me. I mean, it had everything I was really looking for in a Final Fantasy II experience. It had longer cutscenes, it felt like it had a more elaborate story. Looking back, maybe not so much, but it definitely had something there that kept me hooked. It had great character sprites, great design. It was my first tactical RPG, and I fell completely in love with it. I really wish Genesis had more RPGs like that, but outside of 1 and 2, we basically have Phantasy Star and a couple of outliers like Beyond Oasis and, I don't know, Landstalker. Which is okay, but I mean, comparatively to the Super Nintendo, we didn't really get the same thing. Fortunately, a couple of years later, we would trade Genesis and Super Nintendos with our neighbors up the street, and I finally got to play Final Fantasy II from start to finish. And even though I've seen the game in every other segment, it was a completely different thing to experience the entire game from start to finish on my own game with my own characters. It was everything I hoped it would be. Hell, Shining Force 2 and Final Fantasy 2 are still 2 of my favorite RPGs to this day. They just kind of hold that special meaning to me now because they were my first, and they really were the ones that got me into the genre. Looking back on all the amazing RPGs I've got to play over the years, I can really trace it back to those 2 games, and if anybody out there hasn't played Shining Force 2 or Final Fantasy 2, or 4 for you purists, you may not get the same experience that I did from it, but it's definitely worth your time to play. Just if you're playing Shining Force 2, don't call Peter a bird. He's a phoenix, damn it. Even if he kind of looks like a bird. Look at him. This was a video response to the Video Game Players Club, who are doing a podcast on first RPG experiences. You can click on the link in the description below for the Video Game Players Club podcast for new and future episodes. And you can also click on some of the annotations below for some of our channel content as well. And of course, you can check out the Cartridge Club over at cartridgeclub.org, who are heading into October and their new game of the month, Dead Space. Thanks again, I'm Tim from Are You OK? Stay tuned.